Intoxication would have been one of the greatest blessings of the creator if it didn't mess with the head. This line perfeclty described what Johnny Carson had to deal with. For 30 years, he wasn't just a television host. He was the star maker, the godfather of late night. But behind the slick glow of The Tonight Show lurked television's biggest gamble: guests who showed up drunk before the cameras even rolled. Back when publicists weren't watching and social media didn't exist, stars wandered into NBC's Burbank studio 3 drinks deep, turning live interviews into a mix of brilliance and disaster. And these are the 7 most drunk guests Johnny ever had. Chapter 7. Dean Martin. Sometimes I think fake people are like mirrors. I mean, they reflect what they think you want to actually see. And the public persona of the King of Cool was the clearest mirror of all. Dean had built an entire career on charm laced with just the right amount of tipsy swagger. The drink in hand, the loosened tie, that easy sway in his step. It was all part of the performance. Every person played along, too. The insiders said the glass held apple juice. The slurred jokes were scripted. Dean was in control. The drinking was part of the act. And then it wasn't. In the early days, he owned every Tonight Show appearance. He'd stumble out with a grin, toss off a few sharp one-liners, and coast through the interview like he was floating. Carson just loved it. The audience ate it up. But by the mid-70s, the performance started slipping. Something behind the smile had changed. The sway became a stumble. The glint in his eye turned distant. And then came that 1976 appearance. From the moment he walked out, it was clear this wasn't just Dean doing Dean. He was glassy-eyed. He missed his chair while trying to sit. His speech was slurred past the point of charm, drifting into incoherence. When Carson asked about his upcoming NBC special, Dean blinked slowly and asked, "What special?" Completely blank. Then he muttered something about being there to talk to MV, confusing Carson with rival American host Merv Griffin. Johnny tried to save it with a joke. Something about wearing a wig and pretending to be Merv. The crowd chuckled, uneasy. Dean just stared. 2 minutes in, and it already felt like an hour. 7 more painful minutes followed. Mumbled stories, a random burst of singing, and a blank stare when asked if it was taped or live. Then a strange question. Is Sammy coming out next? Davis wasn't even on the show. Carson ended it quickly, but the look on his face, well, that wasn't for the cameras. That was a real concern. Backstage, Carson was visibly shaken. "That wasn't the Dean we know," he told a producer. And after that night, Martin's visits became rare. Chapter 6. Zsa Zsa Gabor. The beauty of a woman is not only seen in her eyes, but in how unapologetically she takes up space. Zsa didn't just enter a show, she announced herself. Drenched in diamonds, dressed like royalty, and always a little larger than life, she built a career on opulence, flirtation, and a thick Hungarian accent that somehow made everything sound just a bit more scandalous. She wasn't acting. She was living in permanent performance. Johnny Carson knew what he was getting when Zsa Zsa was booked. A little mischief, a few racy remarks, and enough glamour to blind half the audience. But in 1973, something was off the moment she stepped through the curtain. The heels were sky-high, the jewels blinding as ever, but her walk wobbled, her timing lagged, and her accent, usually charmingly exaggerated, was suddenly too thick to follow. Carson stood to greet her. She leaned in for a cheek kiss, missed, and left lipstick somewhere behind his ear. The crowd laughed. Johnny smiled, but it was tight. She plopped into her chair and launched into a wandering monologue with no beginning, no end, and no relevance to anything Carson had asked. When he tried to steer her toward the book she was promoting, she dismissed it with a wave. "Johnny Dollink, why talk about books when we can talk about your bedroom?" The audience roared. Carson flinched. Then things got worse. She inched closer, commented on his suit, put her hand on his knee, laughed like she was at a private dinner party. When she stood up mid-story for dramatic effect, she nearly toppled forward. A stagehand rushed out just in time to catch her. Carson, ever composed, wrapped it up with a smooth, "We'll have to continue this next time," and called for a commercial. Off camera, he helped her with a line that would be repeated for years. She came for charm, but vodka showed up first. She was invited back, but always earlier in the day. Quietly, the staff called it the Zsa Zsa protocol. Because when she drank, she didn't change a little bit. She just became more of who she already was. Chapter 5. Shelley Winters. Shelley was the blonde beauty that no one took seriously in Hollywood, until they opened their eyes and realized a legend in the making had just walked into the room. She wasn't just a two-time Oscar winner, or the woman who'd had 4 husbands and enough stories to fill a dozen lifetimes. She was a force of nature, unpredictable, electric, and completely unscripted. And Johnny never knew what version of her was going to walk through that curtain. Shelley had a habit of arriving with a drink in her system and no intention of sticking to the plan. Staff at The Tonight Show had a routine when her name came up. Never first guest, keep her backstage as long as possible, and hope she didn't drink too much in the dressing room. But it rarely worked. Her 1974 appearance became infamous. Meant to promote her autobiography, Shelley arrived on the stage unsteady in heels, laughing before Johnny even finished her name. Instead of answering his first question, she bulldozed into a story about Marlon Brando, waving off the actual topic with, "Oh, Johnny, nobody cares about that." Then she turned to the audience, talking directly to them, as if Carson had left the room. It went downhill fast. A young actor, clearly new to the spotlight, joined them. Shelley immediately placed her hand on his knee and said, "You remind me of a young Errol Flynn." He tried to talk about his film, but she cut in, "His movie's not great, but he's nice to look at." The kid looked stunned. Carson looked exhausted. Then came the moment that completely broke him. Shelley reached over, grabbed his cue cards, and tossed them behind her with a grin. "You won't need these, Johnny. I'm much more interesting." The audience gasped. Johnny didn't say a word. He just cut to a commercial. Afterward, he reportedly said, "If she's booked again, I'm not showing up." And he meant it. Shelley was gone from The Tonight Show for nearly 3 years. She didn't stumble. She took over. And for a host who thrived on control, Shelley was the rare storm no one could contain. Chapter 4. Truman Capote. If Shelley blew in like a storm, Truman arrived like someone who didn't know where he was supposed to land. When he walked onto The Tonight Show stage in 1980, the audience was expecting a sharp tongue and a sharper mind. Instead, they got a man who could barely stay upright. Capote had always been quick, clever, cutting, and impossible to ignore. He was the kind of guest Carson could usually trust to deliver. But that night, none of it showed up. His steps were shaky. His words were nearly gone. Carson greeted him with the usual warmth. Capote mumbled something in return. It wasn't witty. It wasn't even clear. From there, things only got worse. Every question Carson tossed out about his writing, his books, his process, came back scrambled. Capote drifted through topics without direction, landing mid-story about Montgomery Clift that made 0 sense. The audience, unsure if they were supposed to laugh, chuckled nervously. Then he turned to Ed McMahon and asked, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Can I sit in your lap? You look like a teddy bear." McMahon blinked. Carson froze for just a second. Later in the segment, Capote reached for his water, missed the glass, and poured it down the front of his shirt. He didn't react, just kept talking with a spreading stain across his chest like nothing had happened. Carson kept trying, asking tighter questions, anything to anchor the moment. But Truman couldn't follow. He wasn't there. Eventually, Carson waved for an early commercial break. As the screen started to fade, a shot caught him leaning back with the kind of exhale that only comes from a guest you can't save. Backstage, he reportedly said, "That wasn't an interview. That was a hostage situation in slow motion." Capote never came back. What made it brutal wasn't just that he was drunk. It was watching someone that brilliant unravel in real time. This wasn't pride or persona. It was a man coming undone under studio lights, with millions watching. And Carson, the master of control, could only sit beside it and let it end. Chapter 3. Orson Welles. Some people impress you when they speak, but Orson made you stop breathing. His voice, his mind, his weight in the room. He didn't answer questions, he delivered monologues. He wasn't just a guest on The Tonight Show, he was an event. But in 1975, Welles walked in carrying a little too much wine and a little less clarity than usual. The signs were tiny at first. The glistening forehead. The way he skipped Carson's opening question and launched into Shakespeare, problem plays no less. What followed was 14 minutes of unfiltered genius, slurred at the edges but still sharp where it mattered. Carson didn't dare interrupt. You don't cut off Orson Welles mid-soliloquy, even when he's drifting. The crowd wasn't sure if they were watching a breakdown or brilliance. He forgot lines from King Lear, but faked new ones so convincingly, only scholars would have caught it. It was mesmerizing and strange, like watching a cathedral sway, but never fall. When Welles finally paused, Carson glanced at his watch and said, "We need to take a break." Backstage, he summed it up in one line. The genius was there, the sobriety wasn't. But Welles was invited back, always. Because even at half speed, half sober, Orson Welles could out-talk, out-think, and outshine an entire guest lineup. With other super celebrities, drunkenness got you blacklisted. With Welles, it was just part of the myth. Chapter 2. Peter O'Toole. First you take a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes you. And if that line ever found a living, breathing example, it was Peter O'Toole. O'Toole wasn't just an actor. He was theater-bred, spine-straight, voice-trained, carved from the old world. The kind of performer who could read a grocery list and make it sound like Shakespeare. He was also legendary for his drinking. Not whispered about drinking, not hidden drinking, epic, unapologetic, career-long drinking. And when he came on The Tonight Show, he rarely arrived empty. By 1978, when he appeared to promote Caligula, the crew already knew the pattern. O'Toole would have what he called a proper lunch, which usually meant the hotel bar across the street. Still, backstage he was sharp, polite, brilliant. Producers relaxed. That didn't last. He walked out composed, almost regal, sat down, looked into the lights, and instead of greeting Carson, he critiqued the lighting design, claiming it had been created by someone who despised the human complexion. Carson laughed and rolled with it. From there, the interview never stood still. O'Toole drifted, then snapped back, then drifted again. One moment he was lost mid-story. The next, giving great observations about the decay of classical acting training. It was like watching someone wander through fog carrying a lantern. Sometimes the path vanished, then suddenly everything lit up. Then came the fencing. Carson casually mentioned O'Toole's love for it. O'Toole stood up, took Johnny's pen, dropped into a perfect guard stance, and ordered him to rise. Before anyone could stop it, late-night television turned into a fencing lesson. He corrected Carson's posture, demonstrated lunges, explained historical technique. The crowd lost it. Carson tried to keep up, half laughing, half dodging. When they finally sat, O'Toole forgot the movie totally and launched into a story about drinking with Richard Harris that somehow involved Dublin, a 3-day bender, and temporary ownership of a racehorse. Carson stopped steering. He just listened. And that's why O'Toole kept coming back. He never became cruel, never incoherent, never small. Even when the alcohol took hold, something solid remained. Training, wit, music in the language. A man who might lose the road but never forgot how to speak. One writer said it best. Peter wasn't a drunk guest. He was a drunk orator, and late-night television was never quite prepared for him. Chapter 1. Raymond Burr. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you carry. Raymond carried it for decades. As Perry Mason, he was steady, commanding, almost untouchable. The kind of presence that made viewers believe everything was in control. So when he walked onto The Tonight Show in 1970, clearly drunk and visibly disoriented, it wasn't just awkward. It was jarring. He'd shown up nearly an hour late, throwing the entire show into scramble mode. When he finally appeared backstage, the staff could smell the liquor before he said a word. Carson, already annoyed by the delay, was told just minutes before Burr's entrance. He considered pulling the plug. Instead, he rolled the dice. What came next felt like a slow-motion collapse. Burr stumbled to his seat, hair out of place, flushed and unsteady. Carson opened softly. Something about Burr's recent projects. Burr replied with a 10-minute detour into orchid gardening. It was slurred, meandering, and completely off-topic. Carson tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. Burr's acting, Perry Mason, anything. But nothing stuck. The turning point came when Burr stared at Johnny and asked, "What did you say your name was again?" The crowd didn't know whether to laugh or cringe. Carson didn't miss a beat. "Johnny Carson. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Burr." Well, that moment became legend. But behind the scenes, Carson was shaken. He went from courtroom legend to cocktail liability in one night, he said. Burr was never invited back, and after that, every guest was screened face-to-face before airtime. Burr had shattered something, his own image and Carson's threshold for risk. For millions who trusted Perry Mason, it was the night the mask cracked. Not because Burr was evil or rude, but because he was human, and very clearly, hurting. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want more stories like this, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Take care. We'll see you soon.